Hi, my name is Jimarielle Bowie. I'm an attorney at the Nieves Law Firm, and today I'm going to talk to you about consent and how it's defined under California law. So California law actually defines consent. It's basically stated as a person must act freely and voluntarily with the knowledge and nature of the act in order to give consent. It's further elaborated that just based off of relationship, if someone's in a relationship or something of that nature, that does not necessarily imply or mean that consent is given. This is an incredibly specific definition. That means that someone cannot be coerced into consent. If you are in a difficult situation where you have to choose between giving consent or something else, obviously that is not consent. The person must be of clear mind. That means that they must not be under the influence of drugs, be it by their own will or someone else's will. And the other thing that is important to note is that the relationship does not necessarily obligate someone or define consent or change the definition of consent. You can be married and still not give consent. You can be in a relationship and still not give consent. The biggest focus is if a person freely and voluntarily assented or gave consent and to do the act, being fully aware of everything. So again, another point to make is that they have to be fully aware of everything. Withholding information or doing something that another person does not have knowledge of is not freely and voluntarily giving consent and assenting to the actions that are happening. So the biggest points when it comes to consent are several. A person just must be of clear mind. They must freely enter this. That means there's nothing coercing them or forcing them into this decision. And finally, the relationship does not necessarily define how consent is given. Every time someone chooses to do something, it has to be very specific. It has to be free. It has to be voluntary. And they have to have full knowledge of what they are doing. The other really important things to note when it comes to consent is that it can be withdrawn at any time. Just because someone gives consent at one point doesn't mean that consent is there the whole time. Someone can withdraw it at any point, and at that point, that person no longer has consent. That's an incredibly important point to recognize and remember. The final thing when it comes to consent is that some people are not able to give consent. So someone that is underage, someone that is mentally incapacitated, or someone that is incredibly under the influence, those people cannot give consent. Again, that goes into the free aspect and voluntary aspect. So consent is incredibly important when it comes to many arguments in crimes in the state of California. They are defenses, legal defenses to these crimes, but it's also how people pursue or how prosecutors will pursue a charge if someone did not give consent. And so they're incredibly important to recognize. It's incredibly important to understand what consent is, how it works, the fact that it can be withdrawn, who can give consent, and how they give consent in order to properly protect yourself under the law, but also if you're a person understanding if you're freely and voluntarily giving consent yourself. If you find yourself under investigation for sexual assault allegations or anything of that nature, please contact the Nieves Law Firm and see how we can help you.